So I want you to imagine dropping acid over 100 times in a Beverly Hills psychiatric clinic, just desperately trying to forget who you are.
Wow.
Yeah, trying to strip away your entire ego, like piece by piece, just to stop hating yourself. Now imagine the person doing that isn't some fringe counterculture figure, but literally the most famous, wealthy, and sophisticated man on the planet.
It is a totally staggering image.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it flies in the face of everything we think we know about this particular individual.
Right.
When you look at classic Hollywood icons, you naturally assume the effortless charm and grace you see on screen is, well, innate. You kind of want to believe the image is real.
But the image wasn't real.
Yeah.
At all. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking into a man who basically defined suave, debonair masculinity for an entire century, Cary Grant.
Yeah.
But here's the catch. Cary Grant didn't actually exist. He was this masterfully constructed illusion built from scratch by an impoverished, deeply traumatized kid from Bristol, England named Archie Leach.
Exactly. We are working from a really comprehensive historical profile today. And our mission for this deep dive is to sort of peel back those layers.
Let's do it.
We need to understand how a teenage stilt walker ran away to America, engineered a totally bulletproof persona, revolutionized the movie business, and somehow masked this profoundly dark psychological struggle from the public for decades.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because I think when you picture Cary Grant, you picture, the tailored suits, the perfect mid-Atlantic accent, the romantic comedies.
Absolutely.
But the true story of Archie Leach operates almost like a reverse superhero origin story for you. His superpower wasn't given to him by a radioactive spider. It was forged in the fires of just absolute devastating abandonment.
It really was. To understand the armor of Cary Grant, you have to examine the wounds of Archibald Leach.
Right.
He was born in 1904 into severe poverty in a Bristol suburb. And the home environment was incredibly grim. I mean, his father, Elias, was an alcoholic who worked as a tailor's presser.
Yeah, and his mother, Elsie, was a seamstress who suffered from crippling clinical depression.
Right. But that depression wasn't just a vague malaise. It was rooted in a very specific, horrific tragedy that occurred before Archie was even a year old.
His older brother, John. And the details in our sources are just brutal.
Yeah, they're hard to read.
It wasn't a sudden illness. John developed gangrene after a door was slammed on his thumbnail while his mother was holding him. Elsie stayed up night after night nursing him.
And then?
Yeah, the one night a doctor finally convinced her to just get a few hours of sleep, John died of tuberculous meningitis.
Just think about the psychological fallout of that. A mother who is already in a precarious mental state convinces herself that if she had just stayed awake, her child would have lived.
Oh, man.
She never recovered from that guilt. And that completely warped how she parented Archie.
How so?
Well, instead of warmth, she offered suffocating overprotection. She was terrified of losing him, so she became rigid. She banned alcohol and tobacco from the house. She heavily punished him for minor childhood mishaps. And she simply couldn't express affection.
So you have a mother who is physically present but emotionally evolved. But then when Archie is just 9 years old, he comes home from school and she's just gone. The ultimate betrayal.
Completely gone. His father casually tells him she went on a, quote, long holiday.
Which is wild. I initially assumed, reading this, that she had just had enough and ran off, or maybe they divorced quietly.
The reality is much darker, unfortunately. Elias, the father, had secretly committed Elsie to a mental institution Glenside Hospital.
Wait, secretly?
Secretly. He didn't tell his 9-year-old son. He just packed her away, told Archie she was on a trip, and later escalated the lie by claiming she had died.
That is just incomprehensible.
And it gets worse. Elias then dumps Archie at his grandmother's house, remarries by the time Archie is 10, and starts a completely new family.
Wow.
He essentially erases Archie from his life.
So by age 10, Archie has a dead brother, a supposedly dead mother, and a father who started a shiny new family without him. How does a child's brain even process that level of ambiguous loss?
It fundamentally breaks your ability to trust anyone. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it particularly shattered his trust in women, which heavily shadows his later life and marriages.
Right, of course.
But survival instincts kick in. Archie later admitted that his entire drive toward acting stemmed from a massive, aching need to be liked and admired.
Makes sense.
If the people who are biologically wired to love you abandon you, well, you have to go out and manufacture love from strangers.
And his method of finding those strangers is amazing. He doesn't just run away. He literally runs away to join a troupe of acrobats.
Yeah, the Bob Pender stage troupe.
Right. At 14, he gets expelled from Fairfield Grammar School. The official records blame him for being caught in the girls' lavatory and helping classmates steal, but reading between the lines, it feels like a calculated exit strategy.
Oh, it's highly probable he orchestrated his own expulsion, because practically the minute he's kicked out, he rejoins that troupe. He immediately throws himself into learning physical comedy, pantomime, and stilt walking.
Stilt walking, I just can't get over that.
Right. But this physical training leads to a massive turning point. In 1920, when he's 16, the troupe sails to the U.S. on the RMS Olympic.
And talk about cinematic fate. Douglas Fairbanks, the biggest action star in the world at the time, is on the exact same ship, coming back from his honeymoon with Mary Pickford.
Yeah, our sources note Archie actually played shuffleboard with Fairbanks during the crossing.
That is incredible.
Fairbanks was the epitome of refined, athletic masculinity, and he became an instant, lifelong blueprint for the kind of man Archie wanted to become.
So after the troupe finishes their New York run, Archie makes the call to stay in America. And this is the part of the deep dive that really threw me.
The Coney Island part.
Yes. The guy who eventually defines high society elegance spent his teenage years as a literal Coney Island stilt walker.
It's hard to picture.
He worked at Steeplechase Park, wearing a massive, bright greatcoat and a sandwich board to pull crowds. He juggled, he rode unicycles. They literally called him rubber legs.
I know it sounds absurd when you contrast it with a tuxedo-clad Cary Grant, but vaudeville is where the actual mechanics of his future stardom were forged.
How do you mean?
Think about what physical comedy requires. It's not just falling down. It's about extreme bodily control. Vaudeville taught him how to execute a flawless pratfall, brush himself off, and never lose his dignity.
Oh, wow. So that acrobatic control is his secret weapon. Later on, when he's doing these incredibly fast-paced screwball comedies, he's able to use his entire body to sell a joke while still looking impossibly graceful.
Exactly. That's not only his body, but his voice. This is where we see the first real construction of the Cary Grant map.
The accent.
Yes. A thick, working-class Bristol Cockney accent was a massive barrier to employment in American theater. So he started consciously ironing it out.
Just practicing changing his own voice?
Right. He blended his natural cadence with American pronunciations, creating what we now know as the mid-Atlantic accent. It wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate phonetic invention. He was building an untraceable, classless voice.
Which is brilliant because it makes him a blank canvas. But physical discipline and a cool accent don't automatically make you a Hollywood leading man.
No, they don't.
In 1931, he signs with Paramount Pictures, and they take one look at him and say, well, Archie Leach is not going on a marquee.
Right. They wanted an all-American archetype.
Yeah.
The studio ideal at the time was Gary Cooper, rugged, distinctly American. Archie Leach sounded too British, too working class, too odd.
So what do?
The studio executives literally just handed him a new name, Cary Grant.
Just like that. And the character is officially christened, but he doesn't explode right away, does he?
No, he really struggles. He clashes with directors. He plays these stiff, uncomfortable roles.
Then, Mae West spots him on the lot. She demands he be cast in her 1933 film, She Done Him Wrong. That movie goes massive. It practically saves Paramount from bankruptcy, and suddenly Cary Grant has leverage.
Yes, he does.
And what he does with that leverage in 1936 absolutely blew my mind.
You're referring to his contract expiration.
Right. Usually, an actor in 1936 would just use a hit movie to negotiate a higher salary with the studio. But he doesn't reassign. He walks away entirely and becomes Hollywood's first freelance actor.
It was unheard of.
How did a single actor manage to defeat the all-powerful studio monopoly of the 1930s?
To appreciate how radical this was, you have to understand the studio system. It was basically indentured servitude with a velvet rope.
Right. They control everything.
Studios owned actors. They dictated your wardrobe, your public dates, and most importantly, your scripts. You had zero creative control. Grant realized that to protect the Cary Grant brand, he had to own it. By going freelance, he was betting entirely on his own box office draw. If he picked one or two bad scripts, his career would be over and no studio would save him.
But the gamble pays off spectacularly. He takes control, and we get the golden era of screwball comedy. The Awful Truth, Bringing Up Baby, His Girl Friday, The Philadelphia Story.
Iconic films.
And here's where it gets really interesting, the ultimate irony of his career. He became the definitive romantic leading man by playing against every macho stereotype of the era. He wasn't Clark Gable kicking down doors or John Wayne conquering the frontier.
I'm glad you brought that up because his brand of masculinity was revolutionary. The film critic Pauline Kael wrote a brilliant essay where she called Grant the most publicly seduced male the world has ever known.
Publicly seduced, meaning he wasn't the aggressor, he was the prize.
Exactly. Look at how he acts opposite Katharine Hepburn or Rosalind Russell. He doesn't treat his female co-stars as props to be conquered. He treats them as equals.
Yeah, the banter is amazing.
He engages in rapid-fire verbal jousting. He listens. He's willing to be a little goofy, a little vulnerable, and frequently the butt of the joke.
Which is so refreshing.
Kael noted this made him classless and universally appealing. Men didn't feel threatened by him, and women found him vastly more desirable because he wasn't aggressively macho.
Right, he was glamorous precisely because he seemed slightly shy and reserved, but maintaining that perfect, untouchable facade takes a massive toll.
It always does.
You can't run Cary Grant software on Archie Leach hardware forever without the system crashing. And the darkness he was hiding started bleeding into his work, especially when he teamed up with Alfred Hitchcock.
Yes. Hitchcock was a master at weaponizing an actor's hidden depths. They made 4 films together, starting with Suspicion and Notorious in the 1940s.
And Hitchcock saw right through him, didn't he?
Completely.
Yeah.
Hitchcock didn't buy the pure charm. He openly stated there was a frightening side to Cary. He utilized that by casting Grant in morally ambiguous roles, characters who were charming but could very well be murderers. Hitchcock let the audience peek at the cracks in the Archie Leach Foundation.
And off-screen, those cracks were really widening. His personal life was chaos. 5 marriages, highly publicized divorces, elopements.
Yeah.
He married the Woolworth heiress Barbara Hutton. The press cruelly dubbed them Cash and Cary. Though to his credit, the sources note he insisted on a prenuptial agreement refusing any of her money just to prove he wasn't a gold digger.
We also have to look at the very severe allegations stemming from those marriages, which our sources document extensively.
Right, we should get into that.
During his first divorce, Virginia Sherrill accused him under oath of excessive drinking, physical abuse, and threatening to kill her.
That's incredibly dark.
It is. And decades later, his 4th wife, Diane Cannon, detailed patterns of intense emotional abuse.
Now, we're just reporting what the sources say here, not taking sides, but these were bitter, highly reported conflicts that starkly contradicted the suave, unbothered gentleman the public saw. Absolutely. The sources also highlight the intense, lifelong scrutiny regarding his sexuality.
Yes, that was a major point of discussion.
Starting in the early 1930s, he lived off and on with fellow actor Randolph Scott for 12 years. Now, some Hollywood insiders at the time, like the photographer Jerome Zerb and the famous fixer Scotty Bowers, claimed outright that they were a romantic couple.
Right.
A friend named Bill Royce later claimed Grant confessed in old age that he and Scott had been in love.
And it remains a heavily debated topic among biographers.
Yeah.
Again, looking at all the sources neutrally, his daughter, Jennifer, vehemently denies that her father was bisexual.
Right.
On the other hand, Diane Cannon believed he was queer. Grant himself fiercely defended his straight public image. He even sued comedian Chevy Chase for slander in 1980 over a throwaway joke about his sexuality, forcing a public retraction.
Regardless of where the exact truth lies, the pressure he faced is undeniable.
Oh, without a doubt.
Imagine living in the rigid, heteronormative box of 1930s and 40s Hollywood, where the slightest deviation from the manly leading man script could destroy the empire you built to escape poverty.
It would be terrifying.
The stress of hiding any part of your authentic self, whether it's your sexuality, your trauma, or just the fact that you're really a working-class kid from Bristol, has to be totally suffocating.
Which brings us directly back to that psychiatric clinic in the late 1950s. The pressure to maintain the illusion became unbearable.
The LSD.
Exactly. His 3rd wife, Betty Drake, introduced him to LSD psychotherapy, which at the time was an experimental legal treatment being explored by psychiatrists like Mortimer Hartman.
Over 100 acid trips. He called himself an apostle of LSD. And it wasn't recreational.
No, not at all.
He explicitly stated he was taking it to wipe the slate clean.
Yeah.
He wanted to strip away the hypocrisy, the vanity, the, quote, self-opinionated boorishness, as he called it.
He was searching for something real.
He was trying to hack his own brain to cure the trauma of that 9-year-old boy whose mother disappeared.
What's fascinating here is the self-awareness he achieved through that painful process. He openly admitted that Cary Grant was a fiction.
Yeah.
He famously said, "I played at being someone I wanted to be until I became that person or he became me." He realized he had trapped himself in his own masterpiece.
That is heavy.
He even noted that his true personality was much closer to the scruffy, unshaven, grumpy fisherman he played in Father Goose than the tailored spy in Charade.
I find that incredibly moving. He knew the suit was just a costume, and that realization seems to pave the way for his final act.
It really does.
How does a guy who spent his entire life running away from a broken childhood find peace? He makes absolutely sure that someone else gets the childhood he never had.
Yes. In 1966, his daughter Jennifer is born. And Cary Grant, at the absolute peak of his legend, just walks away. He retires from acting abruptly and completely.
And he becomes a full-time, fiercely devoted father. Our sources mention he built a bank-quality, room-sized vault in his house.
A vault. Just for her things.
Why? Because he wanted to archive every single drawing, every record, every artifact of Jennifer's childhood.
Which makes total sense when you look at his past.
Right. His own childhood mementos were completely wiped out during the World War II bombing of Bristol, a bombing that killed several of his family members. He was building a literal fortress to ensure his daughter's history could never be erased the way his was.
It's a profound full-circle moment. But he didn't just sit in a rocking chair during his retirement. He pivoted into a surprisingly shrewd business career.
Oh yeah, he was a businessman.
He'd always been brilliant with money, heavily influenced by his friend Howard Hughes. But later in life, he joined the board of directors for the cosmetics company Fabergé.
And it wasn't just a vanity role.
No, he flew around the world, expanding the company, taking a very modest salary of $15,000 a year. He also sat on the board of MGM.
Which makes you wonder about the industry he left behind. Because, you know, he never won a competitive Oscar during his actual acting career.
Which is crazy to think about.
He used to joke that he'd have to blacken his teeth for the Academy to take him seriously. He understood that award voters equate heavy, visible suffering with great acting, and they completely dismiss the grueling, invisible effort it takes to make physical comedy look effortless.
The Academy did eventually give him an honorary Oscar in 1970, presented by Frank Sinatra.
Right.
But you're right, the sheer technical brilliance of what he did was often taken for granted because he made it look so incredibly easy.
Yeah.
In his final years, he did these one-man Q&A tours across the country, just sitting on stage in places like Davenport, Iowa, sharing clips and answering fan questions.
I love that image.
He called it ego fodder, but admitted it was nice to have his outside substantiated, especially since he finally felt he knew who he was on the inside. He died of a massive stroke right before one of those shows in 1986, at age 82.
So when you look at the totality of this life, from 15 Hughenden Road in Bristol to the boardrooms of Hollywood, what do you take away from this?
It's a lot to process.
Archie Leach didn't just become a movie star. He practically engineered a modern American myth out of thin air and sheer willpower.
I think the biographer Graham McCann captured it perfectly when he wrote that Grant made men seem like a good idea.
That's a great quote.
But we have to remember what the director Stanley Donen pointed out, that magic wasn't God-given. It was the result of enormous, meticulous, grueling labor.
Yeah.
The effortless grace we admire in others is almost always the product of impeccable work. And as we've seen with Archie, it's often built on top of deep, unhealed pain.
It really challenges you to look differently at the personas people project. We all wear masks to navigate the world, but what happens when the mask you create to survive becomes so perfect, so beloved, that it permanently replaces your actual face?
Right.
When you look in the mirror, who is looking back? Did Archie Leach ever truly find peace in those final years, or did he just permanently, beautifully dissolve into the illusion of Cary Grant? It's something to think about the next time you see someone who seems to have it all perfectly put together.